Damn it! How could he know? Sarah muttered, gripping the steering wheel. How did Mark find out? My life is over. Her marriage, she knew, was crumbling. The courts here were still old-fashioned, and Mark would be seen as the wronged party, the primary caregiver. Custody would be his. She'd be a pariah, shunned in their tight-knit Upper East Side community. The priest at St. Michael's would offer platitudes, but his eyes would hold judgment, just like they did with poor Martha Jenkins. Martha lasted barely 3 months after her husband discovered her affair. 3 lonely months of whispers and averted gazes, despite the priest's gentle sermons. This city, beneath its glittering surface, could be brutal to cheating spouses. Sarah slammed on the brakes, tires screeching, stopping inches from a little boy who darted into the street, chasing a runaway basketball. He looked about 4, maybe 5, just like her little Leo. She'd been driving too fast, her mind a whirlwind of fear and regret. The boy's nanny scowled from the sidewalk, even though it was her fault for not watching him. Sarah recognized Central Park West. She was close to home, maybe 10 minutes. She forced down her panic, drove on, hands trembling, another block, and pulled over again before she caused a real accident. How could Mark suspect? She whispered. No, that's ridiculous. Once Mark found out about the affair, it was only logical he'd assume the worst. He might run a small accounting firm from their brownstone basement, but he wasn't stupid. Of course, he'd think it wasn't her first slip-up and want to be sure about the kids. But how did he even find out? Chad and she had been so careful. Thoughts of Chad made her reach for her phone. She navigated to his contact. If Mark asks, stick to the truth. Vaguely, she typed. Her motto in this whole mess. Text me when you can talk. Waiting for a reply, she berated herself. Why, oh why, did I let that smooth-talking jerk get to me? No, be honest, she corrected herself. It wasn't all Chad's fault. Their first time wasn't seduction exactly. It happened in Miami during that grueling conference. 2 days of deal-making, followed by too much champagne at the hotel bar, and then one thing led to another. If it had stopped there, it would have been a secret, a buried regret, hurting no one but her conscience. But it hadn't stopped. They'd both been caught in the thrill of something forbidden after years of predictable marriage. The allure of the illicit, the naughtiness of it all, the ego boost of fooling their spouses, people who knew them so well, or clearly not so well. Her phone dinged. A text from Chad. Dinner with Olivia and the kids. What's up? Misery loves company, right? He knows, she texted back. Mark knows about us. Another ding, almost instant. How? Has Olivia said anything? Don't know. Haven't spoken to him yet. I ran the second I saw the DNA kit. She hadn't even waited for an explanation. The sterile packet on the kitchen counter, the cotton swabs. It was clear as day. Ding. Please. Beg him not to tell Olivia. Selfish bastard. Destroy my life as long as he's okay. Chad, always thinking of himself. I should tell Olivia myself. Misery loves company, remember? She typed back, a bitter edge creeping into her words. How were we discovered? She wondered, pushing Chad's panic aside. She'd been meticulous, only seeing Chad out of town, always adjoining rooms, never entering or leaving at the same time, always careful, even that first time. And back home, acting normal, no changes in her routine with Mark. Another ding from Chad. Olivia seems normal. So he hasn't told her. Do you think he will? How angry is he? Don't know. Haven't spoken yet. Ran as soon as I knew, she repeated. Ding. Please, beg him not to tell Olivia. The selfish jerk. Destroy my marriage, but keep his safe. She almost texted Olivia's number then and there. Misery loves company, echoed in her head. How were we found out? She refocused, the question gnawing at her. She'd even made sure her intimacy with Mark hadn't changed. No new moves learned from Chad. Intimacy with Chad was, frankly, vanilla. He was smaller, less experienced, nowhere near as adventurous as Mark. If it weren't for the forbidden thrill, it wouldn't have lasted the 7 months, the 6 encounters. How unlucky to be caught just before she was planning to end it after their next business trip in 2 weeks. Focus, Sarah, she told herself. How you were discovered doesn't matter now. You were found out. And now your husband trusts you so little he's DNA testing your kids. 20 minutes earlier, she'd walked into their Upper West Side apartment, late as usual, missing dinner with the family. Mark, thankfully, worked from home, did the school runs, cooked dinner 6 nights a week. Sundays were her supposed cooking night, but takeout was usually the easier option. Cooking was not her forte. Walking in, she'd frozen. The horrible scene in their pristine kitchen. Mark sitting at the island, a cotton swab in hand, swabbing the inside of 5-year-old Lily's cheek. An open, sterile packet lay on the marble countertop. 7-year-old Leo stood nearby, either waiting his turn or already swabbed. She'd seen enough dramas to know what a DNA test kit looked like. Her first reaction was rage. How dare he even think? But then the guilt hit, a tidal wave of icy dread, knowing she had to think. To survive this, she just turned and bolted. Just before she did, Mark had looked up, his face blank, neutral. She'd instinctively raised her hands to her face, feeling the blood drain from her cheeks. A blatant confession in that loaded silence. 20 minutes later, here she was, contemplating the ruins of her life, her family, her reputation. She knew Mark, known him since college. Once he was ready to confront her, he would do it calmly, decisively. He wouldn't want a public spectacle, wouldn't want the whole city gossiping about his humiliation. If she couldn't stop the divorce, maybe she could control the narrative, ask him for a quiet separation, irreconcilable differences, something palatable. That way she could stay in the city, see her kids, maybe even get joint custody. She did love them deeply. Her mind drifted, running through scenarios, trying to find the path of least destruction. She was thinking like a defeated woman, assuming separation was inevitable, a quiet divorce the best outcome. But what if she was wrong? What if she threw herself on Mark's mercy, confessed the one-time mistake and the regrettable continuation? He wouldn't want a divorce any more than she did, would he? His trust would be shattered, yes, years to rebuild. But she'd keep her life, her community. If you do this, Sarah, she whispered to herself, you have to be completely honest. One lie, one hint of deception, and you're out on the street faster than a New York minute. She glanced at her watch. Almost 2 hours since her discovery. 2 hours since her secure life had imploded. 2 hours since seeing that DNA kit. Her blood pressure felt sky high. She typed a quick text. I'm coming home to beg forgiveness for the affair with Chad. Please, Don't do anything rash. Then, slowly, she turned her car around and headed home, bracing herself for the worst. What happened next, though, was beyond even her darkest imaginings. 10 minutes after sending that text, she pulled into their parking garage. Before she could even turn off the engine, Mark stormed out of the apartment building yelling, "Stay here and watch the kids!" He jumped into their SUV and sped off, tires squealing. Later, she found out he'd driven straight to Chad's penthouse. When Chad opened the door, Mark broke his nose with a single punch, yelling, "Mess with my wife, will you?" Those words apparently stopped Chad's wife, Olivia, from calling 911. Between Olivia and Mark, they got the full story out of Chad as he begged for an ambulance, claiming to Olivia he'd slipped and hit the wall. The police report went nowhere. When Mark returned, the locks were changed. Olivia had already scheduled an online consultation with a divorce lawyer. How did Sarah know all this? Mark came home, told her to pack a bag and leave. One look at the fire in his eyes, the bruised knuckles, and she knew better than to argue. She packed a suitcase and fled to a mid-range motel downtown. The next morning at the motel breakfast bar, she saw Chad, sporting a bandage across his nose. Any hope of Mark being discreet vanished that afternoon when Sarah and Chad were summoned to their boss's office. No morals clause was cited, just a cold dismissal. "We don't employ marriage-wrecking, bottom-feeding scumbags," their boss stated flatly. The future suddenly looked bleak. When Sarah called divorce lawyers, no one returned her calls. At a diner that evening, the waitress pointedly ignored her. The final blow came when she finally met up with Chad. He was already a pariah. Family, friends, former colleagues, all giving him the Martha Jenkins treatment. Within 2 days, spurred by a visit from the motel manager claiming they were fully booked, Sarah and Chad bowed to the inevitable and left the city. They didn't want to become social ghosts like Martha. They drove 300 miles upstate and tried to start a new life together. It didn't last. Obvious maybe, but cheaters living together? No trust. Sarah had never realized how fundamental trust was until she fought the urge to check Chad's phone every time he went to the bathroom. Eventually, she worked up the nerve to ask Mark if she could come back to visit the kids. He and they had moved on. He was a catch, and once single, the bachelorettes and widows of the Upper East Side had swarmed. By the time Sarah got her act together, there was a pair of dainty heels under Mark's bed. Her kids had a stepmother, already calling another woman Mom. Now too old to start over, all Sarah could do was contemplate the lonely life stretching ahead. From David's perspective, lying in bed, glancing at the bedside clock, 11:05 p.m. The soft breathing of Ruth beside him reminded him of their marathon session earlier. New intimacy after 10 years of the same old routine. Damned good. They'd explored boundaries he hadn't even known existed. Yeah, life was good. Bizarre, maybe. One wife cheated on him, but before he could fully mourn the death of that marriage, he was being seduced by someone younger, hotter, way more adventurous. The surreal last day of his old marriage still baffled him. Maybe if he replayed it for the 10,000th time, it would finally make sense. How did it go? Sarah came home, walked in, and without a word, turned around and walked out. He heard her car start and drive away. He'd been busy for a few minutes longer, and by the time he'd called her cell, It was engaged. No answer. He started the kids' bedtime routine. They were asleep quickly, used to not seeing their mother before bed. Sadly, it was routine. He went to the kitchen, about to call Sarah again, when the house phone rang. Unrecognized cell number. The next few minutes went something like this, from memory. David Brown speaking. "Hey Dave, it's Chad." Chad, of course. Started working with Sarah recently. He'd met him at a couple of work events, even been to his housewarming. His wife, Rebecca, Becky, something like that. Very attractive, great figure, a few years younger than Sarah and him. Chad, on the other hand, David thought was a tosser. Arrogant, full of himself, always looking down his nose. A legend in his own mind. The last person David wanted to talk to after a long day. Hence, his tone wasn't exactly friendly. "Yeah, Chad, what can I do for you?" "What's it gonna take?" Chad asked. David had no clue what he was talking about. "Sorry? If my wife finds out I've been having an affair with Sarah for the last 6 months, she'll castrate me and take the kids. So, I'll be up front, Dave. What's it gonna take to keep your mouth shut?" David remembered dropping the phone, slumping to the floor. The devastating news, his loving wife, betrayal, hitting him like a physical blow. Unbelievable. Yet the panic in Chad's voice was real. His mind raced back to the nagging unease he'd felt lately. Sarah had seemed emotionally distant, withdrawn from him and the kids. Nothing dramatic, just different. Later, he'd realized that was denial, the first stage of grief. It lasted maybe 30 minutes on the kitchen floor. Denial morphed into rage. Blind rage, masking the gut-wrenching pain. He still had enough control not to take it out on Sarah. Prison and all that. But her lover, that was different. As soon as he heard Sarah's car in the garage, he'd driven to Chad's penthouse. Anger propelled him. He punched the jerk hard, square in the face. The feel of bone and cartilage crunching under his fist almost made him smile. Chad's forced confession in his blood-splattered living room was unnecessary for David's understanding, but crucial for Chad's wife. The release of anger allowed him to return home, calmly tell Sarah to leave. Listening to Ruth's soft snores, David realized he was no closer to understanding the mystery. Why had Chad confessed? Why plant the seeds of his own destruction when David was clueless? He kept circling back to Sarah's strange behavior that night, coming home, then leaving again without a word. It had to be connected. He replayed the evening again. Cooked dinner, as usual. Sarah had texted she'd be late. He ate with the kids, chatting about their day. Started clearing up. Lily complained about a sore spot in her mouth. He grabbed a flashlight, tilted back her lip. Ulcer. First aid cupboard. Bactine and cotton swabs. Smeared the cream on a swab. Applied it to Lily's sore. Routine. Nothing to do with the mystery. Bugger. He was starting to think he'd never figure it out. Turning on his side, he slipped his arm under Ruth's head, spooning her gently, kissing the back of her neck. She nestled closer, purring softly. Forget the mystery. Life was good.